Monster Hunter Rise is in a tough position, having to live up to the high expectations set by the explosive success of 2018's Monster Hunter World. It will also be the first Monster Hunter experience for quite a few people, so the game has to appeal to a broad base. Considering the situation, it would make sense if Rise played everything in the safest way possible. However, while it is familiar, Rise strongly establishes its own identity with unique mechanics that add a lot to the core of what the series is all about. Some of the additions are so instrumental that it's now hard to imagine playing Monster Hunter without them. The wire bug is absolutely the star of the game. Think of it as a grappling hook that you can throw out to zip toward any direction. The tool not only changes the flow of combat, but also completely transforms how maps feel in comparison to typical Monster Hunter fare. Areas are designed around using the wire bug to quickly reach distant places. In the Shrine Ruins, there's an entire elevated section stuffed with resources to uncover, but you actually have to put a bit of work in to figure out how to reach everything. Apart from the natural joy of movement the wire bug offers, the game provides an abundance of incentive for you to get out there and explore. Spear birds are small, brightly glowing creatures that you can pick up to buff either your health, attack, defense, or stamina for the remainder of the quest. Permanent buffs are enticing, and the obvious glow of the spear birds makes them easy to spot, so it's natural to wander off your intended course just to snag them. Players automatically pick up spear birds by running over them, keeping the flow of the game intact and convenient to the point that there's not really a strong reason to avoid the buffs. In addition to spear birds, there are also hunting helpers that can either hinder the monsters you fight or aid you through things like healing. These aspects keep battles dynamic, and there are plenty of moments when you'll be in the middle of a hunt and something that can give you a slight edge will catch your eye, providing a spark of relief or excitement. There are even bits of lore tucked away in the maps if you feel compelled to search for them. In previous Monster Hunter games, gathering quests, where you run around the map in search of a specific resource, could feel like a chore that you either slog through begrudgingly or put off as long as you can. But in Rise, these quests become delightful simply because navigating areas is so enjoyable. Hunts are more of a true adventure where the environment is just as interesting as what you're fighting, instead of simply being an arena that houses your prey. The wire bug isn't the only tool that facilitates this feeling. Palamutes are another major addition that greatly changes traversal. The adorable canine pals assist in combat, but even more crucially serve as mounts that can blast across the map, even running up certain walls. Palamutes are so agile that it's fun just riding to whatever you're hunting. They also help take the sting of frustration out of fainting during a hunt, since you can get back into the fray so quickly. Of course, the wire bug transforms combat just as much as it does exploration. In a general sense, the wire bug enables you to more easily remain in the thick of a fight and allows you to be very aggressive. Even traditionally slow weapons, such as the greatsword, can feel extremely mobile. Rise also adds silkbind attacks, which vary wildly depending on the weapon being used. The gun lance, which chews through weapon sharpness, has a guard silkbind that actually restores sharpness if used successfully. On the other hand, using the silkbind attack for the sword and shield whips the blade around in a giant whirlwind. Players use the same resource for either quick wirebug movements or silkbind attacks, and managing that resource appropriately is critical, again helping to differentiate Rise from other Monster Hunter games. Combat in Monster Hunter is already quite complex, and thankfully, the new mechanics in Rise blend beautifully into the already established rhythm. Silkbind attacks complement what many weapons already excel at, adding to the strategy without being overly complicated. Wirefall is a mechanic that is too powerful, however. Upon being knocked over by an enemy, you can use Wirefall to get back on your feet and escape danger. It's ridiculously useful, but it also feels too much like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Part of the joy of Monster Hunter is learning how a monster attacks and evading appropriately. Wirefall doesn't entirely erode the need for that learning, but it does flatten the curve more than it should. Fights feel a little too safe once you get the hang of the mechanic, sometimes making them less exciting than they should be. It uses the same resource as other wirebug moves, but is still remarkably strong. Wyvern riding is another significant new combat mechanic in Rise, one that's both creative and well implemented. By performing certain attacks, using specific endemic life, or by having monsters fight each other, a weakened monster can be put into a mountable state. Once in that state, players can climb on top of that monster and control them. You can either use the monster's moves to damage another creature or ram the one that you're controlling into a wall. Being able to use a mighty beast as a weapon is thrilling, fulfilling whatever kaiju fantasies you may have. Part of what makes it so special is that each monster has its own individual attacks, so it's exciting just to get a sense of what each one feels like to control. Successfully attacking another monster while wyvern riding builds up a meter, and when it's full, you can unleash a devastating special move. Get hit by an enemy enough times, though, and you'll be thrown off a mount entirely, creating a tense balancing act between offense and defense. Smartly, wyvern riding isn't a constant occurrence. You feel appropriate pressure to capitalize on the opportunity when it happens, making each occasion a genuine event. There's a sizable number of brand new monsters featured in Rise, and they blend well with the classic roster. What's most notable is the strong identity these creatures have and how well they show off their individual personalities during a fight. Bishaten, for example, is such a mischievous little devil. It balances on its tail and throws persimmons at the player. Hit it at the right time, and its collection of fruit scatters all around. The elegant Somnicanth will swim around on its back, puffing out clouds of gas that put you to sleep if you're unfortunate enough to wind up in their path. By and large, the new monsters in Rise don't just feel like more of the same, becoming notable entries in the Monster Hunter canon. Online play is an essential part of Monster Hunter, and thankfully, it works well in Rise. It's easy to get together with others with little to no connectivity issues. What is a disappointment is that Rise limits the number of players that can appear in the Gathering Hub to 4, as opposed to World's limit of 16, slightly diminishing the sense of liveliness and community. Also, unlike World, Rise goes back to the old Monster Hunter way of separating single-player and multiplayer quests. There are village quests, which you can only do alone, and hub quests, where you're encouraged to play with others, though you can do them alone if you wish. The system ends up working well in Rise for a couple of reasons. Village quests end up being a perfect tutorial of sorts, getting you comfortable with the mechanics and appropriately preparing you for the harder high-rank hub quests. Plus, as players progress through village quests, they can take special license tests, which allow them to bypass some of the more trivial hub quests. Rise also mercifully doesn't have the awkward moments present in World when you would have to watch a cutscene before other players could join up for a hunt. For as solid of a foundation as Rise presents, it does fall short in a couple of ways. First, the storytelling is pretty disappointing and relatively non-existent. It's not that Monster Hunter is known for great stories, but Rise disappoints even with the bar set so low. There's little development to speak of, and what is there is left frustratingly open-ended, even after finishing the final hub quest boss. If you're new to Monster Hunter or have casually dabbled in the past, Rise will likely feel appropriately challenging, or maybe even quite difficult depending on what you're up against. Rampage Quests, in particular, offer intense scenarios and a welcome break from standard hunts. These quests are essentially tower defense, where you have to set up automated and mountable weapons throughout the map to fend off waves of monsters. Choosing the appropriate weapons at the appropriate places is vital, as is prioritizing the right targets. Some monsters will harass you from the sky, while others will rush key locations that you want to defend. It's a great way to break up the standard Monster Hunter grind, and is much more interesting than something like the sluggish and boring Zora Magdaros encounters in World. Veterans of Monster Hunter, the players that have spent hundreds or even thousands of hours with the series, will likely find Rise a bit too easy, including the Rampage quests. If you know what you're doing, there really isn't any steep challenge in the main campaign that truly pushes you to optimize your equipment. Even doing hub quests alone isn't all that difficult. Experienced hunters should be able to capably handle what comes their way, and will probably wish that there was some higher mountain to climb, especially after years of updates to Monster Hunter World. With that being said, Rise already has a free update coming soon, and if the roadmap of World is anything to go by, the game should be supported for some time, potentially alleviating this problem in the future. Even with a few complaints, Monster Hunter Rise is an excellent addition to a series that carries high expectations. Rather than just follow what's been successful in the past, Rise goes out of its way to experiment with bold new ideas that make it a more captivating game, whether it's your first Monster Hunter or you've cooked thousands of well-done steaks before. The modest power of the Switch does little to diminish the thrill of the hunt, considering how great the game looks and runs. Without a doubt, Rise isn't just a worthwhile Monster Hunter entry, but an essential game for anyone who owns Nintendo's hybrid console. Final score, 9 out of 10. Easy Allies reviews are made possible by generous viewers just like you. If you like what you see, check out patreon.com/easyallies to help us make more. For just $1 a month, you can gain access to weekly updates, spoiler discussions, and exclusive shows.